Sprite Castle, Sprite Castle, Sprite Castle,
Mr. Rob O'Hara.
Sprite Castle.
Well, that was a awkward and dramatic pause. So welcome to Sprite Castle. We're going to be doing something a little bit different tonight. And the reason we're going to be doing something different tonight is because I just earlier this week, actually late last week, swapped out my desktop with my new laptop, which is great. My old desktop is 10 years old and won't run Windows 10 or won't run Windows 11 and won't edit my new GoPro video and won't do a lot of stuff. So it was time for a new computer. So I did the best I could as far as moving software over and things. And then at some point, you just got to rip the Band-Aid off, which is what I did. So I took the old machine and I hooked it up in my server closet so I can still access it if I need to log in and access files and whatnot. But, too close to the mic. But, also too close to the mic. It seems like the new mic, it seems like it's hotter. I don't know. We'll figure it out. So I was planning on using a USB dock, a USB-C dock to hook up all my monitors and my cameras and my microphone and all that stuff to the new laptop. But then I promptly broke the dock hooking it up. So I've ordered another dock. It was an old dock in the first place, and when the new dock arrives, I'll be able to hook everything up. So right now I'm kind of in a in-between phase. So I don't even have any gaming stuff installed on the laptop yet. I don't have too much, but I do have access now to my network shares. And when I ran the Windows 11 test upgrade on my desktop, it said you need a 8th generation processor or newer, and it said your generation processor is 3, which didn't sound good. So plus when I do videos, when I render videos and do stuff for the show, for other things like that, it's pretty much on my old computers like a 3-to-1 ratio. So if it's a hour-long video, it's going to take me 3 hours to render it. And I've done just a couple of test renders on this machine, and this machine, it's an Acer Nitro 12th Gen Riser something, I don't know. But the renders are faster than real time. Like a 1 hour video takes like 50 to 55 minutes to render, and that's at 1080p. So I'm much happier with this than the old machine. It does have a GeForce 3070 or 3080, I forget which one, but my old computer, I was just using the onboard video, so that's an upgrade. So let's see here. What we're gonna do is we're gonna look through some pictures tonight. Steel Rat will recognize the location here. And by the way, greetings to everybody who's come in. I know I've seen Drezu in there. I see Steel Rat, Steve Burtz, Texas Foosballer, Z9K9, L. Curtis Boyle, a few other people in there. So hello, everybody. So this is the what we're going to do right now tonight is look at. By the way, there's no good place to put the cam for this show because I'm on a monitor I don't normally use. It's at a weird angle I don't normally use. Just expect it all to be crap. So just go in with that expectation. and then we'll set that to be the bar and hopefully at least meet that bar. This is the house before the house. So this is 2 houses ago. This is not my house. This is my backyard of 2 houses ago. My house was on a half. Well, I mean, it was I don't remember if it was a half acre lot. No, it wasn't a half acre. But whatever it was on a lot. And then my neighbor, there was an empty lot between us, and then there was a neighbor lot. And what they had done at some point is bought the lot in between them and split it. So it was a lot and a half. And so what the owners before me had done was put that semi above ground pool you could see on the right there, which was the bane of my existence. That thing was always a nightmare. But they also built this workshop, which was the actual inside dimensions were 32 by 14. So it was 14 foot wide, 32 foot long, and it was 40 foot long with the porch, but without the porch. So there was an 8 foot loft up there. But for my 30th birthday, so Jesus, wow, this has been 20 years. I did not realize that till just now, 20 years ago. I'll be 50 later this year. For my 30th birthday, my wife said, "Hey, I'm doing a something for your birthday, and I'm hiding it out there in that building." Now, when we bought it, this building was literally like a wood workshop. There was old scraps of wood out there and stuff. And she said, "I'm hiding your present out there, so don't go out there." And what she did was basically hit up all my friends and leveraged a bunch of favors and stuff, and turned it into my own backyard home arcade. So she put down black and white checkered carpet. I had 2 arcade machines at the time. I had a couple other things. She bought a bumper pool table. She hung up lights. They painted the walls. She turned the whole thing into a thing. And there were 2, like I said, 2 arcade machines out there. And I said, "Hey, is this like the go ahead to buy more arcade games?" And she said, "Yeah, I guess." And so by the time we moved, the most machines I ever had in there at once was a little over 30. So I learned how to really pack them in. I tried some different layouts and things like that. One thing Steel Rat could tell you is to get machines in and out of the building, you had to put them on a dolly, wheel them across the lawn, which you could see there, through the backyard, and then you had to go up 2 steps. But that first one, going up that first concrete step, was a real booger. So it usually involved one person pushing the arcade machine from behind and the other one pulling while they were standing behind on the dolly. And then you had to go up the second row there on the wood, and then you could go through the doorway. There was on the other side of the building, you can't see it here, but there was a combo window air conditioner / heater. So it was climate controlled. This is a pretty old picture. I did eventually hook up some speakers to the outside of the building and pointed them towards the pool so that we could play music from inside the arcade, as it were, and listen to it while we were out swimming in the pool. But this is the outside of my home arcade. And so what we're going to do here is go through this directory, and this directory is essentially, I don't know that it's not every arcade machine that I owned, but it is a lot of it's the majority of arcade machines I owned. And there's probably some random pictures thrown. I have not gone through this directory. The only thing I did was I put 2 pictures and I named them 0001 and 0002 so that that they would show up alphabetically first. Steve wants to know how bright was the porch light. It was really bright. It lit up all that stuff, and it was on a it's like a night timer, so you could just leave the switch on all the time, and during the day it would turn off, and then when it got dark, it would turn on. Drazoo says, did a lot of people visit and game in it, or was it pretty much just for your family? The reason I ask is my brother-in-law set up his in his basement with 12 machines, thinking people would play them when visiting. Sadly, no one did. And he started selling off the machines. Well, so, yeah, not very many people came over. You know, a couple of times we had people over and come out there. One time Mason had a slumber party. In fact, on, I think it was New Year's Eve, Steel Rat came over one time and brought his kids and my kids played games out there and stuff. But the reality is, like, one time Mason had a birthday party and, my idea was that all his friends would go out there and play the games. And then like 10 or 15 minutes later, he said, hey, my friends really want to go inside and play the Wii. And I was like, really? So that's what they did for the parties. They came inside and played the Wii. So, yeah, I get it that they don't have the nostalgic connection and it wasn't really their thing. So, yeah, we spent a few nights out there hanging out, but a lot of times it was me by myself, hanging out there. So, all right, let's see. I want to make sure I'm clicked on this screen again. As I told you, this is not my normal setup here, so things could be a little clunky, but this was just to give you an idea of the layout. It didn't look like this for very long, but this is when this is kind of like the first transition. So I started adding some games here on the side. But one of the things we found out was that the center of the building, the actual design of the building itself was not good, and the ceiling was starting to bow in, and so we had to add those center column supports for the roof. And so I think I painted them at one point. I tried to hide them. I put machines on both sides of it. I did whatever I could. But yeah, this is pretty early on. You could see that we had an air hockey table out there, but over and over, I just got rid of everything that wasn't arcade games. So let's get started. Again, this picture folder is just called My Arcade Machines. I think there's some extra pictures in here, probably. I don't know what all's in here. But I do know that the majority of the machines I owned, there are pictures of in here. So it will be alphabetical, and we'll just be going through it. And I'll be, when there are things that aren't obviously arcade machines, I'll look at the file name like I am right now, and we'll see what we're looking at. Okay, so this, I remember what this is right at the beginning, is a series of pictures called 48-in-1 install. So I had bought... the more common version of this board now is the 60-in-1, but I had bought, this is before that, I bought a 48-in-1. So these were little motherboards that were JAMA compatible. So you could take a JAMA game and swap out the board with one of these. And it was basically like MAME on a chip, except for not a great version of MAME. I mean, it was okay, but there are subtle differences. But if you had a JAMA cabinet and you wanted to upgrade it and have Donkey Kong and Pac-Man and all the classic stuff all in one machine, then this was an easy way to do it. So I think there's a few pictures. That on the left is a DVD. So that's just to give you a size comparison as to how big the board is. That's the board on the far right there. This... is still part of the same series. So that Turbo Force was a machine that I bought that had a 25-inch vertical monitor in it that was in great condition, and it had Aero Fighters 2 in it. And I had that Neo Geo, and I also had Aero Fighters 2 and Aero Fighters 3 for the Neo Geo, so I didn't need the game that was in this cabinet. And so I swapped out, and this is the machine that I put my 48 and 1. Let's see here. And by the way, Steel Rat was always the master of vertical shoot 'em ups, and I am terrible at it. The only thing I'm good at is when he eventually dies, and the only reason he dies is because I can't shoot anything. And then when he eventually dies, I run around and get all his power-ups. So that's kind of the agreement, how that used to work. This is the back of that cabinet, and you can kind of see, I think I left on, can you see? Yeah, my cursor. For those of you that have not been in a lot of arcade cabinets, there's 90% of an arcade cabinet is empty. You got the back of this big monitor here. Everything from here below is empty, and then on this one there was this piece of wood in the back. And this is two large boards for aero fighters, but as you can see, that's a board and then the power supply right there. But everything else in the cabinet is just empty space. And people think they're full of stuff because they're so heavy, but they're so heavy because the wood is what makes them heavy. This is me removing the JAMA. So anyway, what I did just for this picture is I balanced the new board. So you can see how small the new board is on the top compared to the board I was replacing there. JAMA stands for Japanese Arcade Machine. Is that right? No, amusement? I don't know. But it was a standard. And so this right here is a JAMA harness. It says JAMA right there. And so JAMA games have up to 2 joysticks and have up to 3 buttons per player. And so this harness for all JAMA games is interchangeable. So you could take, now some are horizontal and some are vertical. So you might have to reposition your monitor, but JAMA games you could just plug and unplug like that. So, Steve, I used to say, like every time I bought a new machine, I would also buy a bottle of Advil. It was definitely a backbreaker, and I'm sure as Aaron can attest to, especially having an arcade in the backyard that you had to drag machines across the lawn and do all that. It was definitely a pain to get machines back there. Aaron has a good point, as he said, until kick harnesses came out. So what kick harnesses were was an additional harness that would go with a JAMA game. So if you think of a game like X-Men that was 4 players, X-Men is JAMA, so you'd use a JAMA. It's going to be a long night if I cough during every single picture. So you'd use your JAMA harness for the machine and the first 2 players, but then there would be an extra, what they call a kick harness, which was just like an extra connector to run players 3 and 4. So that's how you could expand past the limitations of JAMA. This looks like a final picture. I left my mouse cursor right in the middle. There's a final picture of the machine running the 48 and 1. So that's looks like Donkey Kong Jr. there, but that's what it looked like. Okay, just catching up on stuff. All right, yes, 720. One of the 2 machines, one of my biggest regrets. There's 2 machines that I regret selling. This is one of them. 720, as most people know, is a skateboarding game from Atari. By the way, that's my garage. So when I bought games, I would usually back up my truck or trailer to the garage and unload things there, and then I would clean them, go through them, and make sure everything was working, and then move them out to the arcade because my tools and stuff were in the garage. And there was a driveway next to the garage. So this is my 720 cabinet. I got an unbelievable deal on this. I'll never forget, a guy called me up, a local arcade wheeler and dealer, and said that this had shown up, and he knew that this is my favorite game of all time, that I'd been looking for one, and he said he would sell it to me for $400. In this condition, you could see everything worked on it. The only thing it didn't have was the side art that said 720, and I bought the side art, which was about $100. So I paid $100 for the artwork, and $400 for the machine. Now I'm not sure what a market value on a machine in this quality would be, but probably 3,000 to 4,000. But if you've ever played 720, you know that the joystick is not really a joystick. It's a spinner with a joystick that's mounted off axis. And so it turns and the ball on the top spins. And there's never been another controller like it. So, they've put 720 out. You can play it in MAME. You can play it on any of those Midway arcade collections that were out. But it's never the same. Because even with analog sticks on the PlayStation or whatever, it's really not the same. So I kick myself at times for getting rid of this one. By the way, this has a 25-inch medium resolution monitor that Atari used on these. And so just the monitors on these are worth several $100s. Yep, definitely miss the 720. There's me, quote unquote, breaking it in. Yeah, good times on that one. One of the things that I'm glad that I did was I did try to capture all the machines that I had in, whatever state they were in. Drezu says, like Paperboy with the handlebars, you will never be able to duplicate that experience. And that's true. You can play Paperboy with a joystick, but it's really not the same as using those handlebars. And I don't know that necessarily makes it a good, it makes it better, I guess, but it makes it unique, and that was the thing is, these arcades were competing with home video game systems and home computers. And how could they do that? Well, they could put in, a unique control or put in graphics that a home machine couldn't do. So, old 720. A lot of time, the cameras in my phone and whatever I used at the time to take pictures, it was real hard to get a good picture of the monitor. If you took a picture of the monitor when it was bright, then everything around it would be dark. Or if you took a picture focused on the cabinet, the monitor would just look white. So it was pretty tough to get good pictures of stuff, but I didn't stop me from trying. But yep, there's old 720. What is this one? This one's just called Arcade. This is some random, I see Mason down there. I think that's from a series of pictures that are probably in here. Oh, baseball. I remember this machine. Baseball, let me make this big, I think this was called maybe Double Play Baseball or something. I don't remember. This is the game, you may remember. It had this unique controller where it had a spring-loaded bat, like a little joystick, and so you would pull the bat straight back, and then when the pitch would come, you would let it go, and it would snap forward, and that's how you batted in the game. I don't think it's just called baseball, but that's all that was on the marquee. Now, if you are an arcade person and you're paying attention, you may notice something about this cabinet. If you look over on this side here, this is a Williams Robotron cabinet. So this was one of the first times I learned the lesson about posting pictures online, because I had so many people almost yelling at me, like, what are you doing? Why have you not converted this back to Robotron? And I was like, well, first of all, I didn't convert it to baseball. And there's no Robotron parts left in this thing. There's no Robotron control panel or PCB or anything like that, so there wasn't anything to convert back. I would have had to buy all that stuff again. And I kind of like this baseball game. So if you got into collecting when I did, which was kind of like the big used market push, where all the arcades were going out of business. So all these machines were being auctioned off. Like I probably, I don't remember exactly, but this is probably a $50 game at the time, you know? And so these things were just Frankenstein combination of machines that had been put together to, keep these things running and stuff. So that's kind of what you were getting. Yeah, this is another case where this is a baseball game is worth $50, and if you pulled all the baseball stuff out, I probably could have sold the baseball kit for $100, and then sell a Robotron cabinet for $100 or whatever to somebody looking to restore Robotron. So a lot of the arcade machines, I mean, I would say almost all of them are worth more in parts than they were as a whole, and especially ones like this that were kind of chop shop jobs. Double play. There you go. There's the. I don't know if you want to see that, but that's got the name on there. Double play. I had a lot of games that were kind of like off the beaten path, and so I would try to make sure I got pictures of the title screen so that I would know what the name of them were. That's obviously the back. I don't know if I had the back to this cabinet or not, but that was real common at the time. Was buying machines at auctions and the backs would always be missing. I don't know why people took the backs off and then lost them somehow. It seems like there would only be one place for them to go, which would be back on the machine. But that was real common. Real common. Like probably a third of my machines didn't have backs for some reason. The good news is it was easy repair, with some 1/4-inch plywood and some black paint. There's more baseball. And more baseball. Sure like that baseball. Bucky O'Hare. This was a fun machine. This was one of when I started this era of collecting, this was one of the first 2 machines that I purchased. I know a lot of people like Bucky O'Hare because they liked the comic book. A lot of people liked Bucky O'Hare because they liked the television show. I didn't know anything about Bucky O'Hare, and I literally bought this machine because my last name's O'Hara. That is 100% why I bought this machine. Now, this is one that when it was time to sell this cabinet, I think I could sell this cabinet for like 100, maybe 150, something like that. But collectors were looking for the board, and I ended up selling the board like by itself for 300, and then I sold the marquee and the control panel to somebody for 100. And then I ended up selling an empty cabinet with a monitor and a power supply for 50 or something like that. So again, not something that I love to do, but when you're trying to sell something, I mean, all you got to do is take the parts apart and then you can, make 5 times the money. That's kind of how it works. I never did that with, I never converted anything. I just never I wasn't interested in doing that, but I could have made a lot of money doing that, but I just didn't want to do that. By the way, a lot of my games, if you'll notice up here at the top, I was really bad at removing auction stickers. So this is obviously a game I bought at an auction. It has a lot number on there, and then I would try to peel it off, and they never came off, and then I would go, oh, well, and I would just leave, which is says something to my laziness. Let's see here. This is more Bucky O'Hare. And by the way, when I bought Bucky O'Hare, I'm going to go back one picture. Notice how this is a 2-player version, and on eBay, the board for the 2-player version was going for like, $50 to $100, but the 3-player version was going for $300. And it turns out that they're the same board. They're the exact same board. There's just a dip switch on there to go from 2-player to 3-player, and you just have to have the other harness. But it has a spot on there for the harness. So I don't know why people list them as 2-player. I listed it as 3-player. So there's some Bucky O'Hare. I did enjoy Bucky O'Hare if you like a side scrolling kind of beat 'em up game, like X-Men and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and stuff like that. it was a fun game to own. Yeah, see, that's the cabinet that I had it in. The old Sente. Bucky O'Hare. Okay. This is it at my storage unit. This is when I was getting rid of games. I don't know why I took another picture of it, but I did. Oh, Burger Time. Burger Time. Now, this is a interesting cabinet. I bought this as an empty cabinet. There was no monitor. There was nothing. This is literally just a wooden cabinet with the marquee and everything else. And I bought it because I was going to use this as my 48-in-1 cabinet is what I was going to do. I was going to move the power supply over to this and put a flat panel LCD screen in it and make this my 48-in-1. And I'll show you. I know that there's a picture of the side art on here. Well, we're going to get to the second game. And I'll show you what the second game was. But you can see the cabinet was in good condition. I mean, this is obviously when I first brought it home, so it's all dusty and stuff. But that's the side art. And the guy had sent me the picture of the side art, and so I bought it based off of that. And when I got it home, you can't tell in this picture, but the side art was like completely crackled and dried. And if you brushed up against it, you could just start wiping off the paint. It had like been stored on the sun somewhere, you know. I don't think you can see. Yeah, you can't really see in this picture, but yeah. So it looked great, and I thought, well, I could put clear coat on there and stuff, but like when you got up close, it just looked like fractured, like 1,000 little, almost like a stained glass art. You know what I mean? And I just knew that it wasn't gonna last. And so I did. Ending up, I found a guy that was restoring a Burger Time, and so I ended up basically selling it to him what I got. Now Steel Rat went with me to go. He went with me on a lot of these random pickups, and the guy that sold this to me was in Tulsa, and he was having a Halloween costume party, and so Jeff and I drove to Tulsa, and then went inside this guy's house, and everybody was like in costumes, and the lights were out. There were black lights and strobe lights and all this, and we're like, yeah, we're here to get the arcade machine, and so we just kind of walked in through the middle of this Halloween party and did that, and then came home. Turned around and came home. It's a 2-hour drive to Tulsa, so it was a 4-hour round trip to go get this, to get a machine that turned out was useless. So here is a series of pictures of Cactus Flax. I don't know how many are in here. I printed that at work, I think, on our vinyl printer. So as most of you, or some of you may know, that there's a local arcade here called Cactus Jack's. And so when I built my main machine, I wanted a name for it. And so I came up with Cactus Flax. And so this was the marquee that I designed. Now the colors on this look kind of weird, but it's because the marquee, the plexiglass was smoked plexiglass on the cabinet that I used. So I had to make the colors real kind of bright and washed out. So when you put it behind the plexiglass, they turned out. So you could see there, and that's not with the light on. With the light on, it stood out pretty well. Now this is another cabinet that people used to like to yell at me about, because obviously this is a Donkey Kong Jr. cabinet, and people would be like, why did you convert this into a main machine? And they would yell and throw tantrums and stuff and tell you how to do your hobby and how to do the things you like to enjoy. But the reality is that when I was a kid, my dad bought this machine for my sister, and it had a Tetris clone in it called Block Seed, which was a game from Sega. And the Sega, this was a Sega 16 board, which I'm sure Amigo Aaron, when I say that, he probably instantly knows. But the Sega 16-bit boards had a thing on them called a suicide battery. It's not the only game that I had with a suicide battery, but the way that it worked, Sega and some other companies, but Sega was particularly worried about other companies cloning and selling bootleg copies of their arcade boards. And so what they did was they put a chip on the board that was encrypted, and then they put the decryption key on another chip that did not get power from the board, but got power from from a battery. So they put this battery on there. So what happened was, if you tried to pull the chip off the board, it lost the battery connection, and it was now encrypted, and you couldn't see the code. So it was this kind of hardware-based copy protection. But what happened was, over time, those batteries weren't designed to last forever. And so the batteries would eventually die. And when the battery died, the encryption chip wouldn't fire up, and now it can't decrypt the other chip, and so the game stopped working. So that's why it's called a suicide battery. Now, what I encountered, and I found this out the hard way, was I bought a Shinobi cabinet. And the very first Shinobi I bought, I own multiple Shinobi machines over the years, and you'll probably get to see them if we make it all the way through, but it didn't have any sound. And so when I got home and started looking at it, I found that the battery had started leaking acid, and underneath where the battery sits was the sound board. And so that's why the Shinobi didn't have sound. So there were a lot of things over the years that I learned the hard way. So like I found a different Shinobi machine for sale one time, and the guy was like, I think the speaker's out. It doesn't have audio. And I was like, no. I know what that problem is with the Sega board. No, thank you. I'll pass. And it's pretty tough to repair like battery acid damage on a PCB. I'm sure there are guys that could do it. I'm not one of them. So when I found those, I would just pass. What they did, if you look at MAME, like if you look up Shinobi, you'll see one that says decrypted. So they actually, I guess they were able to decrypt the chips and do that. But Capcom was another company that did a lot of that. So I think there's probably a lot of Cactus Flack's pictures here just capturing this. But again, by the time I inherited this machine, the PCB didn't work. There was no Donkey Kong Jr. parts in this cabinet at all. And I think the monitor had died. So I ended up, everything that was in there, I just threw away, and I put a PC in there. This is all just pictures. Oh, you know what? I think there may be a better picture of this. Yes. Now unfortunately, it's a very blurry picture, but I'm going to zoom in here just so you could see this. So when I built my first MAME machine, there wasn't a great MAME front end, and so I wrote my own. So this is a MAME front end that I wrote in Visual Basic 6, I think, VB6. And so on the left-hand side, you could pick what game you wanted. And then, those are just like the names of the MAME ROMs. But over on the right, I built a little database. So based on what the name of the name, it would show you like the title over there, and then it would pull up a picture. So if you could see this layout, if you could get that idea right there, you could kind of see again, although maybe I hadn't added the pictures to it yet or something, but that was kind of how it worked. So you would scroll through the joystick, find the game you wanted, and then it would play it over there. So it's much easier to download one today, but back in the day, this is what we did. This is pretty early. I think when I made this, I'm sure I'd heard of MAME machines, but there wasn't a guide or anything. I was just out there just winging it, just trying, just like, hey. And I had just heard of the iPac, which was, I think there's probably a picture of the iPac in this series. But an iPac was a controller. It's basically a keyboard emulator, and now they're USB. So you plug it in, and it's got a whole bunch of different little places to hook up wires for the joysticks and stuff. But the one that I had was super old school, and it just had a PS2 keyboard port on it. So yeah, this was an okay machine, and for a homemade jobby. Let's see. Okay, now this is funny. This is for some reason, I got it in my head that the inside of the cabinet should look like the inside of an arcade cabinet. So if you can see down here on the left, this is all just a PC motherboard. I mean, you can see the cards. I remember that I mounted the hard drive, but I took the whole case apart and mounted all that stuff to the wood to make it look like an arcade game. If I were doing this again, I would not do that. I would put the PC in there and maybe some duct tape so it wouldn't fall over, and that would be the end of it. I don't know why I felt the need to do that, but and then you could see, the heat is always an issue with these, so I had added fans. As long as you have one in and one out, you're usually good. Also, I had to reinforce that monitor stand because that was a 17-inch CRT monitor. Now, here's something else that's funny. I forgot all about this till I saw this picture just now. I totally forgot about this. But the Wi-Fi in my house would not reach the building. It was not strong enough to reach the building. And so when I would go out to work on this machine or something, I needed a way to connect to it. And so I have this, if you look on top of the monitor, this is a really old 10 megabit hub, not switch, hub that I got somewhere. And you can see there's a network cable running all the way down. And I'm sure this was on some like 10 dot whatever subnet or 192.168 subnet. And so I would bring my laptop out here and I would plug into another port with an IP address on the same subnet. And that's the way I could copy files and stuff back and forth to it. I totally forgot about that. But I did not have Wi-Fi set up on it. So I had to use that that switch, which literally just sat up on top of that monitor. But you couldn't see it from the front, of course. There's another shot inside the old main cabinet. Oh, this is the iPack. This is what I was setting up the iPack. So again, if you've never seen one, so this is what an old iPack looked like. There's a PS2 keyboard connector going in there. Or maybe, I don't know, it looks like maybe one for keyboard and one for mouse. I don't remember. Maybe one of those was for power or something. But then you just had all those little contacts where you would run all the wires to all your little switches. So, yeah, good times. Definitely a lot of trial and error back then. And just my whole goal for this one was to make the cabinet look completely stock. I didn't want anybody. In fact, what I would do sometimes is I would put Donkey Kong Jr. running on it and just see if when people came in, if they noticed that it was a MAME cabinet and not a regular machine. And the other thing was when you had a CRT monitor in there, it was a lot more difficult to tell. It wasn't like it was a bright LCD screen that kind of gave away the game, More wiring. Yeah, there's another shot of the old. Yeah, you can see the logo there of the iPack on the far right. There where the C is the C from Pac-Man there. Yeah, I always wanted to make a 4-player main machine. And one of these days I may do a 4-player main machine and put something out there in the building. But the reality is I never have 4 people to play arcade games with. So it became Ultimark. Yeah. All right. Oh, Centipede, you can't run away. You can't run away. There's little Buckner and Garcia. With all apologies to them. I had my old neighbor, Pat Deckard, who I've talked about on podcasts and stuff, was a very well-known realtor, and she had her fingers on everything in the community. And she called me one time and said, "Hey, do you still collect those video games, Robbie?" And I said, "Yeah, I sure do." And I said, "Well," I said, "Yeah." And she said, "Well, there's a, what do you call it? Like a estate sale, and they've got some of those video games that you like." And I go, "Do you know what they are? Are they Atari or are they Nintendo?" And she's like, "No, they're the big ones." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And so I went to the estate sale and I bought 2 machines. There were 3 machines there, and the third was a Shinobi that was a really bad conversion that also did not have audio. Haha. So I did not buy that one. But I want you to take a look at this machine real quick. Now, there was a problem with the video that I was eventually able to resolve by swapping out a chip. But I want you to look at this machine. And while you're looking at the artwork here in the front and the cabinet, I want to tell you that I paid $50 for this machine. And that's why it was so good to be in arcade collecting in the early to mid 90s. And even early 2000s, and why you can't afford to do it today. Because now this is a $1,500 to $2,000 machine, and I can't afford them. I certainly couldn't afford 50 of them. But yeah, that was my Centipede cabinet. The trackball. If you ever buy a used machine with a trackball, you got to go in there and rebuild some stuff and clean them all out and everything. But yeah, it worked perfectly. So there was a graphic glitch, and I don't know if I've got a picture of it or not. But at the bottom of every sprite, there was a line. Yep, there you go. So you can see this is a normal game of Centipede. But everywhere where there should just be a blank tile, there's a line at the bottom. So the mushrooms are drawn okay, if you could see that. But everywhere where there was a blank space, there was just this line, and it just ended up being a bad ROM chip or video chip, and I just swapped it out. It was nothing. And actually, I had a friend have a spare chip. He said, "This is an old board. I don't know if it works. You're welcome to it." And I got the chip and swapped it in, and it changed the whole game into like some sort of duck shooting game. So it was still Centipede, except for the centipedes were ducks, and it was like a little guy with a gun or something like that. And I was like, well, that's worse. But I did eventually get this problem resolved. But man, when I look at the artwork and everything on that, that was a good looking machine. That was a good looking machine. I just found a replacement ROM that was one of the video ROMs. There was a bunch of ROMs, on the board, and I just pulled it out, swapped it out with a good one, and that fixed it. For the record, there is the other machine that I got at the auction or the estate sale that I also paid $50 for. As you know, you probably know, I'm Miss Pac-Man today. And Miss Pac-Man's not worth as much as you might think, because they've got all those like 25th reunion ones and stuff like that, But also, as you can see, a lot of Miss Pac-Man games, depending on where they were facing, and I'm sure I've got other pictures of it, but notice, Miss Pac-Man was all stenciled artwork. And so you've got this yellow, and you've got this pink, and I don't know if you can see like how dark this pink is, but obviously this is the side of the machine that was facing the sun, and the pink always turns white. So whenever you see one of these, you can tell this is probably a laundromat machine or something, was sitting facing a window. Did most arcades have soldered in chips or chips that were pressed into chip mounts? Well, it kind of depends. But a lot of times, like a game like Centipede, where they would make a board, and I'm talking above my pay grade here because I don't exactly know, but there were boards where it was like this board could be used for multiple games. So they would make the board, and then depending on which ROMs you put in, it would make it like a different game, right? So they didn't have to design a PCB necessarily for every single game, right? So, so you would put like your normal, like those Sega 16s, all the main chips would all be soldered in, and then like the EEPROMs that would be unique to that game would be pressed in. Yeah, that's right. That's right, Aaron. Yeah, the EEPROMs were mostly socketed. So, now one of the things a friend of mine that does his arcade stuff, one of the things he always does when he gets a Miss Pac-Man is he replaces all the T-molding with hot pink T-molding, and they look so good. And on the centipedes, he always replaces it with green T-molding, and it really makes those colors pop. It's kind of a cool touch. If I'd have kept those machines, I probably would have done something like that. Again, centipede. Commando! I think this is another one Steel Rat went with me to go pick up. The guy that was selling this was the guy that was the wheeler and dealer, called me and he said, listen, I've got this Commando machine. It's pretty much mint. I'm selling it for $200. It was either 200 or 250. But anyway, he was like, listen, I could convert this right now to a 60-in-1 multicade. And go back, you were showing us the gun show. Oh, I'm probably just holding up the camera, would be my guess, but yes. So anyway, it was basically like a rescue thing. He was like, listen, I'm about to tear up this machine if you don't want it, if you won't come buy it. So I went and bought it. I loved Commando. I played Commando pretty early on. I was a big fan of it. This is the condition that I got the machine in. You can see the marquee. You can see the control panel, the bezel. The monitor was nice and bright. Side art was all good. No complaints. It worked fine until I sold it. It worked. I think maybe one of the grenade buttons didn't work on one side or the other, and I put in a leaf switch, but I mean, that's such minor stuff. Here is the Defender machine that I talked about on a recent episode. I think the last episode of one of my shows. This was the Defender that had basically been abandoned. It was sitting out in front of a daycare, and a friend of mine called and told me that the daycare had gone out of business and no one was there anymore. And so I just went over. Basically, he said, I'm telling you two things. Number one, this is sitting in front of a daycare that's been abandoned. Nobody's renting it anymore. And number two, the police shift change is directly at midnight, which means they stop patrolling like 10 minutes before midnight and they start patrolling 10 minutes after midnight. So there was about a 20-minute window just in case a guy wanted to roll up at midnight and take an arcade machine from a parking lot. And so that's what I did. Now, this is the side of the cabinet that is good. And this was the side of the cabinet that was pushed up against the wall, so it was protected from the elements. They were literally using this as a toy box, so they were children's toys. In fact, if you look down in there at the very bottom, there's a children's hair dryer in there. There was a couple of doll heads. There was all kinds of weird stuff in there. So now this was the good side of the door. That's right. I was just picking up trash. This may have been after I already started emptying out stuff, but yeah, just like kids' toys and stuff. They were just using it as outdoor storage, which is amazing to think that, kids, were sticking their hands in here where got all these sharp edges and stuff and all these sharp edges on the monitor. I mean, I'm sure this hadn't been powered on in years. So there's probably no power left in that capacitor on the monitor, but I wouldn't want to be the one to find out. This is the bad side. And this was the side that was exposed to the elements. So you can see there's literally layers of the plywood that were missing. So there was no bringing that one back to life. I mean, in theory you could restore anything, but not for me. So this is literally multi-layered plywood. Let's see if I can get it close enough. I don't know if you can see, but it's layers of the plywood that are missing. If you could see right there. Yeah, it would have been a tough one to restore for sure. That is parts of the machine that were sitting down in the bottom, I believe. So I was able to get the electronics out. Nothing worked except for the monitor worked. The monitor worked on it. I hooked up. I had a Mortal Kombat PCB and plugged it in, and it worked. By the way, we are roughly 1 hour into the stream, and we are in Defender. So I'm either going to have to pick up the pace, or we'll have to make it a two-parter. So we'll see what happens. That's the Defender coin door, and the coin box. So this is the disassembling of the Defender. I think this may be the machine that I bought a sledgehammer, the reason I bought one. But I saved everything that could be salvaged off of it and found people that needed the parts and stuff. That gives you an idea of what the control panel looked like. Just not too much left of the parts that were exposed. But I still have this marquee. I've got this marquee sitting on my building right now. I've got about 10 or 15 marquees that I've never put up for to display or something, but I should do something with them, but other than just leave them in a pile. Oh, that would be nice. I'd like to have arcade games at there's a better shot of what the control panel looked like. Just not so good, Al. Yeah, I've seen people build light boxes for the marquees and stuff, but I'm not going to build 15 light boxes, so I don't know what I'll do. That's the monitor. Again, the monitor worked. It was unbelievable. And monitors are normally the thing that goes bad, and that monitor still worked. RCA still worked. All right, let's get past Defender here. This is parts. Oh, Dirt Dash. I bought this because I didn't have a sit-down racing game. That's the only reason I bought it. I had no particular affinity to Dirt Dash per se. And I don't know if you could see. I'm going to point something out here because this is the only story I have to go with it. But it has these giant plastic wheels attached to the side of the cabinet. There's one there and there's one there. They were held on with torque screws, and then they were glued in place. So it was basically impossible to remove those things. And then what I found out is even though it came disassembled, you pulled the seat. There were bolts down the bottom, and the seat pulled back, so it moved in two places. But even with the seat moved off, I couldn't get that machine through the doorway of my arcade. With those wheels attached to the side of it, of course it was a wide cabinet anyway. I couldn't get it out. So Mason played this a few times. We played it a few times in the garage, and I ended up selling it and it never went into the arcade because I couldn't get it through the door. So lesson learned with the old Namco Dirt Dash. Well, I think what happened is I think that the side wheel things were probably a high theft item, right? And so I understand using the torque screws to hold it in place, but I think probably the arcade owner used the glue. And so between the two things, I mean, without doing a bunch of destruction, I just couldn't get them off. And so so I think it was a 1-2 combo. This is, you've probably seen me post this picture before. This is my elevator action machine. This is the very, very first arcade game that I ever owned. I found it in a newspaper ad for sale. I believe it was $150. And I didn't know anything about owning arcade games. I didn't know anything about collecting arcade games. I didn't even know people sold or bought arcade games or had them in their homes, really. And I mentioned it to Steel Rat. I was like, hey, I found this newspaper ad for this machine. And he said, hey, I'll pay for half of it. I'll go in half so you can put it in your house. So technically this machine is half Steel Rat. He is half owner of it. And so this is in the dining room of my mobile home. So when I got home, I backed the truck up to the front door and I put it on a skateboard and I wheeled it and put it in the corner here. Yep. I tried to hide it over here, and when my wife was very cool about it and let me keep it. And I had it for many years. I love elevator action. What is this? Why do I have another picture? Oh, this says game room tour. So this is probably some miscellaneous pictures here in the middle. There's Mason playing some air hockey. Mason turned 21 at the end of last year. So so this is an old picture. There's Mason playing Shinobi. These are just random pictures here in the middle. Mason sitting on a stool playing something. Oh, it's Air Force or Aero Force. This is kind of when I first started getting machines in there, but you can see, like, again, anything that has the poker table there in the middle, which was also a bumper pool table. It just, I didn't keep that stuff very long. I emptied all that stuff out and made room for more machines. So I've got pictures of all these machines, so I'm not going to focus too much on the small collections. Here's my Gauntlet 2 cabinet. I found this for sale I bought this on eBay, and it was in Dallas, which was a 4-hour drive. And I've told this story before, but it was two men who were living together and were breaking up. And so when I arrived, they were in the middle of a lover spat and were being very mean to each other, and neither one wanted to help me move this machine. So they argued and yelled at each other a lot while I moved this machine out and paid him the $200 and got out of Dodge. Did any machines get ruined when the roof leaked? No, actually I had one roof leak and it ruined a bunch of books. I had a little display area and I had a bunch of arcade and video game books, and they got wet. So those got ruined. But, yeah, when I had a possum that chewed a hole through the roof and it came through, but really all that got water on was the poker table. So, yeah, this is the back of, it's got serial numbers and stuff. Suitable for indoor use only. This is the old Gauntlet 2. And I sold this to my friend Ice Cream Jonesy, who lives in Denver. And so was it North American Van Lines that would move games? And so I told him I'd sell it to him, which was a great deal for what I got, which was $200. And then he paid $400 shipping. So, but which he said was still cheaper than he could get one at that time in Denver. It was still a better deal for him. So, but yep, no problems with that machine. Looked great, played great, loved it. I loved Gauntlet. Let's see. And Gauntlet pictures. This is one of those where when you tried to take pictures, it would sit there and the monitor would always scroll. So, it always looked fine in person, but it was hard to take pictures of. This is my gumball machine. I still have this. This is out in the lobby of my movie room now. I actually went to an auction that had nothing to do with, it was like a Friday night auction. It was like a place that sold furniture and this and that. And I went and this came up, and I think I paid $75 for it. So it's all metal, so it's very heavy. And there's some rough spots on it, like little rust spots and stuff, and I've never done anything to it. I mentioned to a friend that dealt with old stuff and collectibles, and she basically said, I'd leave it. She said, you're not going to change the value, and there's as many people who want it in the original state as they want it in a restored state. So, I just left it. Now, it has 4 individual candy machines, and it has 4 locks, and none of the locks are there. They're all missing the locks. So eventually what I did is I just take these tops off and I would fill them with candy. And as Jeff can attest to, I always try to keep atomic fireballs in one. I usually try to keep gum in one, and wacky or Laffy Taffy in one. I've put smaller things in there like Skittles and M&Ms and stuff like that, and they're so small that they fall through the mechanism, and so every time you open the thing, they're just always falling out. So that's it, sitting in my upstairs movie room at the last house. So it has made the move with us many times, and it's like I said, in fact, there's atomic fireballs in it right there. Actually, you could barely see this, but what I did was I put a different candy for each person in the family, and then I put our pictures. So I don't know if you could see that, but there's my face, and that's probably my wife's, and then I put each of the kids on there. But that didn't last long, but that was a fun thing. Heavy Barrel. This is I've told this story, but this is the first game that I bought. It's definitely the first one that I bought out of town. And there was a guy that listed this, I think, on Digital Press. And so it was in Austin, or maybe past Austin. I think it was past Austin, maybe. So it was like a 6 or 7 hour drive to go get this machine. Now, he had a couple of extra PCBs, and I wanted this because the joysticks, these are the rotating joysticks. So it had Heavy Barrel, it had Gondomania, something else. But I wanted a Data East cabinet that had the rotating sticks. And so, long story short, when I went to go get it, I knocked on the door, and a gentleman my age answered the door, and I said, I'm here to get the arcade game. And the guy turned around and started screaming and goes, you sold our arcade game? And the kid said, well, it's mine to sell. I could do what I want. And I was like, oh, so talk about awkward. So the kid, who was, high school age, 17, 16, 17, had sold the machine and not told his parents. And I had driven 7 hours in the rain to come pick it up. And I'm standing there getting soaking wet with cash in hand. So that was awkward. And then a buddy of mine helped me move it. And as we were moving it down the hallway, I was knocking pictures off the wall. It was so awkward. But that was Heavy Barrel. I will say that the side of it was covered in this. It was like vinyl. It was like wrapped in vinyl. This wasn't paint. It was vinyl. And it had a little tiny tear in it. And I started pulling it, and it all just started ripping off. And I was always going to sand it down and paint it. But instead, I just bought more machines and put them really close to it. So I didn't have to restore it. It was much easier to just buy machines. These are, I don't know if is there more? Yeah, let me go back. These are jukeboxes that I bought. I bought 4 jukeboxes one time in Hutchinson, Kansas, which was 6 hours away. I saw them all in working condition. And when I got home, only one of them worked, and the other 3 had broken in transit. And I don't remember exactly what I paid, but let's say I think I paid $1,200 or $1,500, something like that, for all 4 jukeboxes. And I gave one to my dad. My dad paid me for the 4th of whatever I had done. And then the other 3, I eventually almost gave away. I sold them for $100 each because they had all, the spring, I didn't move them properly. There's a way to properly move, jukeboxes, and I did not do that. Yep. So you can see this is a constant, sight in my driveway and neighborhood. There is, jukebox, 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 jukebox. And the reason we had gone was to get this empty cabinet for a main project for a friend of mine. By the way, I drove through the Pike Pass thing on the turnpike and paid my toll and drove through. And then all of a sudden, all the alarms started going off and everything. And what had happened was I just paid, I didn't even know, but I'd paid the toll for a car, but I was pulling a trailer with 2 more axles. And so I had set off because I had underpaid and it took my picture. However, if you could see, my license plate was somewhere up here behind all these jukeboxes. So they did not get a picture of my license plate. And somewhere in Hutchinson, Kansas, or outside there, they are looking for a green Isuzu Rodeo with a trailer full of jukeboxes. What does this say? This says Make Tracks, Defender, and Altered Beast in Garage. 3, I probably must have got all these around the same time. Again, this was not uncommon. I would move machines into the garage, fix them up, clean them up, and then move them out into the arcade. This is Map Mania. This is, I know Aaron appreciates this one. This was one of my favorite games. They had this game at the convenience store that was near my house as a kid. This is the first game I ever purchased at an auction, and I got it for $35. They were trying to sell it for $500. They kept dropping the price because no one wanted it, and so I got it for $35. I'm going to give you guys a second to see if Aaron or anybody else can identify what this cabinet is. If you know, you know, but it is definitely not a Map Mania cabinet. Now this was in a, my wife and I bought a house that was built in 1880. It was a old crappy house. That's 27 years before Oklahoma was a state. And it was an old house that had been converted into individual apartments. So there were 5 kitchens, 5 dining rooms, 5 living rooms, 5 bathrooms. It was all apart. And then we bought it all as one house. So we just had all these little things. And one of the kitchens and dining rooms, I just ended up turning into a mini arcade. So the giveaway here is you've got this, it's hard to see, but it's a flat line that comes all the way down. This is an old gyrus cabinet. So again, probably worth more as a gyrus cabinet than it was as a converted Map Mania. This is Megaforce. I'm going to tell you this. I don't even remember playing it. I barely remember owning it. It was not a game that I loved. And I think I bought it because it was cheap. That's really all I could tell you. It was probably one that I got at an auction for not very much money. So if you love Megaforce, you liked it more than me. What does this say? Model number. Oh, this is the monitor. Oh, so this is Mortal Kombat. So, let's see. Can we see this thing here? Let me skip. Okay. So here's the story. So, I got this Mortal Kombat. So my sister called me one day and she says, my boss has an arcade game, wants to know if you want to buy it. And I was like, I don't know, what is it? And she's like, well, it's a Mortal Kombat and he wants $500 and it doesn't work. And I was like, I paid $25 for working games, so no thanks. And then she called and she was like, okay, he says he'd take $250. I was like, Linda, I'm not buying a game that doesn't work, you know? And then she said, you know what? He just wants to get rid of it and we'll bring it over or something. I was like, okay. So it went from me paying $500 to them delivering it for free. And so they said, when you turn it on, it makes sound and all this, but it was just the monitor. So it was a dead monitor. So they call that playing blind when you turn it on, you know, it would play blind. And so this is the monitor, I believe, out of the Defender and me testing it, but I ended up getting it all working and putting it back into, so this was a Mortal Kombat 1 cabinet. Now, this was the issue. This is the Mortal 1 Kombat or the Mortal Kombat cabinet that it came in. Now, if you're looking at that side art and it looks a little confusing, that is because this is the side art of 2 games. It was the side art of one game, and then they put side art of another game over it, and over time, half of it ripped off. So, if you know your games, I believe, I might get this wrong, but I believe this was Lunar Lander that was then converted to a Black Widow. I might be wrong about the first one, but I remember that the second one, I definitely remember it was Black Widow, which was a pretty rare game, right? And so if somebody were looking for something to restore or something, I mean, this would have been a good candidate, right? But I wanted to make it Mortal Kombat. And the thing was, everybody is like, oh, you should save the side art, but you can't save the side art when half of it's gone. And there's no point in saving half the side art, you know? And then they're like, well, the other side art could be in there, but as you pulled this off, the other side art was coming off. So there was just no saving it. So I believe now this is the front of the machine. So you can see it had the Mortal Kombat marquee. The front was all black, but on the side it was, and by the way, Atari cabinets are heavy. This thing was heavy. And Steel Rat has the unfortunate timing of showing up usually right when I'm starting a project, and you have to pry tools out of his hand. He will jump in and just start work on anything. And so there's a Steel Rat. We're taking a look at the cabinet, and this is us with a belt sander cleaning off the sides of the cabinet. And the belt sander, it turns out, will take side art right off. And so that's what we did. Sanded it down, painted it black, and had it as the finished the old Mortal Kombat cabinet. So that's us working in the backyard doing some sanding. There's me. So this is Jeff. I let Jeff sand 99% of it, and then I'm like, hey, get a picture of me. Make it look like I'm working too. Yep. That was kind of what it looked like when I finally got it all with the new monitor in and getting everything set up. That's with the old side art on there. Actually, if you look on one side, I think it has the complete side art, and then the other side it's half and half. So it was just kind of one of those ones. And look, so there's the Mortal Kombat system, but running on that monitor from the Defender cabinet. So that was good times. That's how we got it all working. This is again the Miss Pac-Man that I got. You can see how good the paint looked on the side. A little bit of fading on the front because this line here should match the same color as that line there. So you could see that the wood paint on the front. So, like I said, this is somewhere in a grocery store or laundromat or somewhere that was facing, this side was obviously facing a front window. It got sun faded. But that thing worked, played good. I sold it to a friend of mine who lives half hour away. I delivered it to him, and he still got it in his home office today. This is I bought this from a local guy. This is a Multi-Williams machine. I don't remember what all it had on it, but it had like Defender, Bubbles, Joust. I think there's probably a picture that shows things, but it was the nicest looking machine I had. And so, Susan said I could put this one inside the house. This is actually the last house. So this was after I had the arcade. But yeah, you can see on the marquee, I think there's Robotron, Defender, Joust, Bubbles, and all these games had been modified to work with a normal joystick. So you could play Defender with just a normal joystick and a shoot and a thrust button. So it was much easier to play, but, this cabinet looked really good. It was very, very clean looking. By the way, this cabinet, along with several other ones, ended up at the Arcadia Retrocade, and this one is in their party room. So if you ever go to the Arcadia Retrocade in Fayetteville, Arkansas, and go in the party room, you'll see this game sitting right in the corner of the room. What is this? This is more Multi-Williams pictures. Oh, this was after I moved it, and the horizontal or either horizontal or vertical sync went out, but I was able to fix that. Oh, I forgot about this. This was my Neo Geo cabinet that I ended up selling to a guy. I had two Neo Geo cabinets. I had a one with a smaller one with a 19-inch monitor and a 4 cartridge port. And I had one that was a 25-inch monitor that only had one, I think, or two slot one. And so I swapped the boards. So I kept the one with the big monitor and I kept the 4 slot and I put the 2 slot in the smaller one and sold it to a guy. The guy, so this isn't at my arcade. This is at that guy's house. But he owned a auto painting booth. And so what he did was he had sent me this picture because when I had it, it was still black. And he repainted it. He reshot it Neo Geo red and then put that stencil and stuff on the side. So that was my old cabinet, but after he painted it. This is obviously a Nintendo Versus cabinet. I own 2 of these and maybe just one. I think I just owned this one. I took it back because the other one was a Nintendo Tint. But this is another one I found out there was literally no way to get it through the door. So I loved Excite Bike as a kid. So this had Excite Bike and Super Mario Brothers, I think, on the other side. And I really wanted to own an Excite Bike machine. But because the way that this front panel is shaped, I could not get it through the door of the arcade. It just would not fit. Worked fine. Super Mario, Excite Bike. That was a cool machine, but a little too big. I did eventually learn my lesson about buying machines that wouldn't fit through doors. This is a weird game. It's not exactly, but it's very similar. It's a fighting game, and it's very similar to like Sailor Moon. And this says Power Instinct 2. I don't know if that's right, but obviously, if you've been to an arcade, you recognize this cabinet as being a punch-out cabinet with the dual monitors. I think I paid $50 for this, which now just having the two working monitors would have been worth a lot more than that. But this is one that I bought at an auction because it was working. It looked like something fun to play. This is at a time where I paid $50 for this, and a new PlayStation game was also $50. So why not buy an arcade game? Why not? Why not put a game in your kitchen? This is my Cubert cabinet. This one I got because a coworker of mine, Tim Dog, was driving home and drove by a garage sale and said, "Hey, there's a Cubert game for sale at this garage sale, and they want $100 for it." And I said, "Tim, do you have any rope or chains?" And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "I want you to go tie yourself to that machine until I get there." And so I called my boss and I said, "I have to leave work right now. It's an emergency." And he said, "Is everything okay?" And I said, "Yes, there's a Cubert arcade machine for sale for $100. And he said, "Go, go, go." And so I took off and everything worked fine. The only problem with this machine is just something that I noticed that stands out to me is that there was a little tear in the side art right here. Just a little tiny tear of Coily's face. And I always, in my head, I imagined that I was going to get markers and redraw it or something like that. But instead, I put that side up against a wall and the other side looked great. And that was it. But I got this at a garage sale for $100. I don't know why I'm not smiling about it. I should have been much happier. You can see the side art and the other side looked just fine. This machine ended up at the 1983 arcade here in Tuttle, which has since closed down. I'm sure it got sold, but it went to an arcade as well. Golly, that was a good-looking game. And the thing about Q*bert is it really gets hard after about 10 to 12 minutes of playing. So every time that you want to play, you got to get through all the easy levels and until you get to the hard levels. So this was I think Steel Rat might have stepped out. I'm not sure, but I got this at Cactus Jack's. It was I knew the guy. I knew the arcade tech, and he had some empty cabinets he was getting rid of, so there was absolutely nothing in this. And Jeff was talking about building a main cabinet, and so I was like, hey, I'll go get you a cabinet. And so when I got there, I had this an old Kix Taito cabinet, and so I got that. And I know one time I went over to his house and it was still in the garage, but he may have gotten rid of it. And he had to move he moved all over the country with his job. He moved to outside of Atlanta, and then he moved outside of Denver, and then eventually moved back here. So I don't know if it survived all the moves, but yeah, that's what that is. This is Rampage World Tour, which was in okay condition. And there's another game there next to it. I got both of these at a auction. It was like a local place that had Asian furniture and home decorations, and they were having an auction, and they listed it and said, we have vases, we have couches, we have all this stuff, and at the bottom it said 2 arcade games. And when I went there, the whole room was like older Asian people and me and one other guy that looked just like me. And I was like, I know what you're here for. And he was looking at me like, I know what you're here for. And we sat through the whole auction, and then they eventually sold these machines. And I think he was willing to go up to like 180, and I paid 200. So I got both of the machines, each one for 200. So yeah, I'm a much bigger fan of the original Rampage. I would have preferred to own the original, to be honest with you, but this is what I got. But you can see 3-player action, looked great, played great. No real complaints, you know. Side art peeling a little bit, but it was all right. No back, because why would you keep the back for your arcade cabinet? That'd be silly. This is both of them on the trailer. You can tell I brought them in on the same day. Rampage, and the other one is the Marvel Superheroes versus Street Fighter. I'm sure I've got pictures of that. Now this looks like Gauntlet 2, but this is not Gauntlet 2. This is Rampart. And I bought this as part of a group sale. And a guy said he had Rampart and another game I wanted on eBay, and he said they were like $300 each. And I was like, well, I really only have like $500, so I can't really afford both of them. And then he was like, well, I've got 5 games. And so we kept going and going and going. And eventually he was like, I got 5 games. I'll sell them all to you for $100 each. So it's $500 for all 5 games. And I said, perfect. So this is one of the games. Jeff and I loved playing Rampart in the arcade. Now, some Rampart machines have trackballs, and I'm more familiar with the trackball version, but this one worked just fine. If you've never played Rampart, it's a really, really fun 2-player game. You can also play with 3-player, and it's available. Like there's a Super Nintendo version, and I'm sure there's some other ports. But basically, it's you have a castle, and there's 2 modes. You build up your little castle, and you put guns where you want, and then on the second phase, you fire all your guns at the other guy's castle, and you tear down the wall, and then you have to rebuild the castle, and it has to be a complete line all the way around the castle. If all the walls aren't connected, then you lose. So you got to rebuild your castle, and they give you different pieces. It's kind of like Tetris, like they give you different pieces. That Marvel superhero versus Street Fighter is super expensive now. $3,000 for it. Yeah, I know, man. I could have kept all this stuff and put one or maybe both of my kids through college. I do kick myself sometimes. But there's Rampart again. It's funny. It's the same monitor as Gauntlet, and it's another one that I had trouble photographing. So it must have been something with the resolution or something. But yeah. And also I have the Rampart. I took the marquee off because it was like a piece of vinyl, and I still have it. But I don't know why I took it off. You can see there's kind of the gameplay there. There's your castle, and you build the wall around your castle, put your guns, and then the other guy builds his, and then you shoot each other's castles and stuff. It's a lot of fun. I really like Rampart. This is Rampart, Karate Champ, and Nintendo Versus. So I don't know why I wouldn't have Karate Champ by itself. Maybe this is my only picture of the Karate Champ. That can't be. But yeah, this is the other game that I hugely regret selling. I've told this story before, but this basically the Karate Champ, when we opened it up, it had tokens from a local arcade, which was also the local arcade that I played this game at. So I actually had like a direct connection to the lineage. Like I knew I had played this game as a kid, and then I ended up owning the exact same machine as an adult. Here's Road Blasters. This was a super fun game. This is it at a storage unit. Worked great. Atari, these games always had great sound. I really love Road Blasters. It's a fun game. This is one of the RoboCop machines that I owned. I got this really, really cheap. Everything electronically worked great. It kind of looked like butt. You can see that the control panel just has kind of that generic thing on it. I don't remember if we decided this was a Rally X cabinet originally that it got repainted. I mean, it's a Namco cabinet, so it's Miss Pac-Man. I mean, it's something, but the orange T molding, I think Rally X was the only one maybe that had orange T molding. I just don't remember. But yeah, and then it had just a big white piece, and I don't know if there's a picture of it or not, but I used a Sharpie and I drew a marquee that said RoboCop, and I drew a picture of RoboCop on there at one point and stuff. Yeah, this is just a junky cabinet. Now this is my other RoboCop, which is also not a RoboCop cabinet. I forgot what this is, what that cabinet that originally was, but it looks a little bit closer, at least, to being a dedicated RoboCop, Yeah, I mean, of course, they were always repurposing cabs because they had to make money. You know what I mean? So they would, and especially when JAMA came in, and you could just order a whole new kit. So you'd order a kit, you didn't have to get rid of the old cabinet. You just spend an hour and put the different marquee up and the different bezel and swap out the board, and now you got a new game. You know what I mean? So, yeah, totally different. That's the second RoboCop cabinet that's in front of the house. Well, there's one of my mini scramble machines. That almost looks like a gyrus machine. I can't tell. Maybe. These are all the same machine. Oh, look, there's my... It needs to be rotated. Is there another picture of it here? No. Let's see. There's the old homemade RoboCop marquee. There's a RoboCop there. Pew, pew. I enjoyed that. This is RoboCop, Rampart, and Karate Champ. Okay. Scramble number 1. So I bought Scramble because I got a really good deal on it. Got it home and realized I hated Scramble. And eventually got rid of it. And then I found another Scramble machine. That says Scramble, but that's not Scramble. That's Megaforce. These are not labeled correctly. There's Megaforce. Look at that. These are not Scramble. That's Scramble. This is an okay looking machine. It was all right. I think I paid $50 or $100 for it, but I will tell you a super inside trivia that I think has been fixed. But when I bought this machine, somebody had obviously spray painted something next to it, and there's a line of white spray paint overspray. Now I was able to eventually get this off with some goof off and stuff, but when I first got it home, it had this white line on it. And when I went to KLOV, they did not have a picture of this. So this is a long time ago. And so I uploaded like a picture of my cabinet. And so for many, many years, if you went to KLOV, the Killer List of Video Games, and looked up Scramble, it was this cabinet, and I could always tell it was mine because it had that stupid white line running down the middle of it there. And so I think somebody eventually fixed it. They found a better picture and they uploaded it. Now, Scramble, by the way, had different artwork, and this one had different artwork on both sides. On one side, it had this really cool stenciled picture of an astronaut and all this stuff. And then on the other side, I think it just said Stern, which was much more boring. Yeah, look at that artwork. I love that side art. So that was a cool side art. And see, and it had it on both sides. But the other one, I think, had it on one side and Stern on the other or something. But yeah, I always thought that side art was real. I like that era, of artwork. I think, like I said, I think I paid $50 for one and $75 for the other. I don't remember. Scramble. No back, because why? Why would you keep the back? Now this is the other Scramble. So look at the side art. This one just has the big giant stenciled Stern running down the side. See that? And I'm trying to, that is out at the arcade, because I can tell by the carpet. Yeah, so this is much more boring side art. And yeah, this one was really cheap. And what I found, this is one of the ones where I learned about water damage. So if you could see down here, this has been sitting in water and it was all peeling away and stuff. So every time I touched it or moved it, more of it would fall off. That was great. That was super fun. But at least it didn't have a white stripe down the middle. But yeah, the side art on this one was, I like the other side art. I don't know why they were different. It must have been different runs or something. This is a Shinobi, and why did I decide to destroy it? I don't remember. Maybe I was having a bad day. I don't remember, but I did destroy one of my Shinobis with a sledgehammer. Took the cabinet and got it into a trash bin, but I saved everything off of it. This is one of my Shinobis. This was what I used to call my main Shinobi. That worked great. It had the good side art, had the control panel, marquee, everything played great. So this would be what I would call my main Shinobi. No back on it though. Speed Buggy. So everybody knows this game. Everybody loves this game. You may know it as Buggy Boy if you're a Commodore fan or a Amiga fan. I played this game. They had this at Big Ed's, which was the burger place that was right around the corner from my parents' computer store. And so I would go over and, you don't like Buggy Boy or you don't like Seawolf? I'm going to wait and I'm going to let you correct that. arcade game was, I mean, I grew up playing the Commodore version, and I know that at the time, I don't know if this is still the case, but I read at one time that this could not be properly emulated in MAME because the motherboard had two different processors that ran at different speeds, and for some reason MAME was just not able to handle that. So, well, I loved Speed Buggy and Buggy Boy. I liked the arcade version, and I liked the Commodore version. So, I'm sorry if that buggies you. Mason liked it too. Look at that. Now this is a funny story. I had a coworker who had this in their house growing up, and their house caught fire. Their house got hit by lightning and caught fire. And after that, the arcade game never worked. And so he asked me if I wanted it for free, if I would just come get it. And so I came and picked up this Star Wars cabinet. Aaron, what's a Star Wars cabinet, even a non-working one? I don't know what that would go for these days, but I'm guessing a non-working one would still go in the high hundreds, and working ones I think are thousands for sure. Now, I got this at a time where I didn't know anything about arcade games, and it literally could have been a fuse. It could have been, I didn't know. And I had it for a long time, and then somebody offered me a lot of money for the cabinet, and so I sold it. I sold the cabinet. But, yeah, I mean, it had, now I don't have the, monitor in it in this picture for some reason. I'm not really sure why, but it did have the monitor when I got it. It was 100% complete. I mean, it had everything. I may have pulled some stuff off, but it was one that was purchased very early and then used in someone's home. So it was really good. It was really good condition. This, it looks like it's set out for trash, but there's no way I threw that out for trash. I just don't remember, but I must have put it out there for somebody to come pick up. Yep, more pictures of it. This was, I bought this at one of the first auctions I went to. This says Champion Street Fighter, but it was Street Fighter 2 Championship Edition. And obviously it was a pretty bad conversion. And when I bought it, as I was leaving, they were like, "Hey, that PCB has problems." This guy, and he was like, "I know, because I'm selling it." And I was like, "Great." And he said, "But I have another PCB for $50 or something." So I paid and I got another PCB. And this one was missing some of the micro switches for the controllers, and Jeff volunteered his Epix 500XJ joystick, and we took it apart and took the micro switches out and put it into this cabinet. And so that's the switches that were in this cabinet. This is Sunset Riders. I got this because it was cheap, and my goal was always to convert it into some sort of Konami 4-player monster machine. I was going to buy a Simpsons board and buy other boards and stuff to where I could swap them in and out. And I didn't have this super long. I think somebody made me an offer on it, and I was like, if you want it, you can have it. So, a lot of times, like, the thing is, I would buy like a game like this at an auction for $100. And then somebody would offer me $200. And I'd go, yeah, sure. I made $100. But I wouldn't take into consideration the fact that I had driven to Dallas. I had driven my truck and trailer 4 hours away. So 4 hours worth of gas, and then spent all day at an auction, and then bought a game for $100. And of course, in my mind, I didn't figure in the tax or the 15% they add on, and then drove 4 hours back. And then I'd be like, I'm making $100, where I'm basically my hobby was losing money. It was well, what are you going to Yeah, Sunset Riders. It was a fun game in its own right. You know what I mean? You're killing me on these prices. Yeah, but yeah, I'm pretty sure I do have most of the prices recorded, but I think like 150, something like that is what I paid for this. There's Sunset Riders in action. Again, it's always hard to get pictures of the arcades back then. Super Off Road, one of my top 5 favorite games. I believe I paid 150 for this. And then I ended up buying the PCB that was the upgraded track pack where you had upgraded tracks. So no problems with this machine. Monitor worked, game worked, all the steering wheels, all the gas pedals. You could see the condition of the side, the top. No problems at all. Loved it. Loved playing it. Loved racing. This and 720 were tied for the heaviest games I owned. This one was a booger, and I did have to take the control panel off to move it through the door of the arcade. $90. That's a good deal too. Yeah. Any of these games now, 3 digits is a good price, and 2 digits is crazy. I know Jeff and I played this a lot. I have streamed myself playing the Super Nintendo version. I will play it for hours. I do enjoy this game. This is Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3. Now, I like Mortal Kombat 1, I like Mortal Kombat 2, I like Mortal Kombat 3, and I like Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3, but I thought if I'm just going to own one, let's just get the Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3. And I want to say I paid a couple hundred for this. So I had this on one side of the arcade. I had Mortal Kombat 1 on the other end of the arcade. Yeah, like I said, I think I paid 200, but it was in this condition. So, yeah, this was definitely, this is one of the ones where you buy it and drop it in the home arcade, and then that was it. They ran. Yeah, I started going to arcade auctions in the mid 90s and was buying through the late 2000s. I mean, like 2010 up to that. So, but it was at a time when there was just no market for these games. You know what I mean? Nobody wanted them. Nobody was running. And then retro arcades started making a comeback, and then people started doing that, and then they started buying them for the house, and the market went way up, and there were fewer machines. So, I mean, I was buying at a time when there were a lot of games and not many people buying them. You know what I mean? So now there's a much higher demand for them, but back then there was very little home demand, and so the prices were definitely in the collector's favor back then. Yep, that's my Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3. Again, you can see everything was there. Marquee, control panel, it all looked pretty good. Dirty. This must have been when I just brought it into the garage to clean it up. This is more shots of that Williams multicade that I had. What is this? Oh, X-Men and Neo Geo on trailer is the name of this picture. So this was an auction purchase. So remember that Neo Geo that I showed you earlier that was all red or whatever? This is the same cabinet. This is before that guy painted it. So this is I'm trying to see. I guess this is a 2 slot. And you can tell how old this was in my purchasing because this is my dad's dolly. This is an old stolen orange U-Haul dolly. That's my dad's. And so this must have been before I bought my dolly. I did a episode of Cactus Flack's podcast. If you like arcade stuff and these stories and you want to hear them in a little bit more detail, there's an episode of Cactus Flack's about this X-Men cabinet. And this is the one when I purchased it. And when I tipped it over, I found out that it was completely full of quarters. I paid $50 for this machine, and there was about $75 worth of quarters inside. So there were more quarters in this machine. I mean, the machine paid for itself by buying it. It's a very low resolution picture. This is Zaxxon. Now, I bought this at I went to an auction. Steel Rat went with me. And we went to an auction that was for a bingo parlor that was going out of business. And they said they had some arcade games. And what was funny is I had gone to arcade auctions, and there would be like 5 or 6 other guys there buying games, bidding on games, whatever. But I didn't know any of them. Well, then I got into the hobby and I started meeting all these local guys and finding out who was fixing games and who was buying and selling games and doing all that. And then, so I went to this auction and look, and there's 5 or 6 guys, and I know them all. And I know who they are. They're all the guys that are selling the machines, and they're only bidding on their own machines to keep the prices up, so that a machine won't go really low. But one of the guys said, I have no use for this, and I'm just going to let it go. And so I paid $50 for this, brought it home, worked perfect, no problems with it at all. In fact, I did yes, they were all shill bidding, all of them, and bidding on each other's stuff. And like I said, I thought it was all on the level when I first started in the hobby, but then later as I got to know the people, it was a real downer. By the way, I think, let me zoom in on this. I can't tell. No. Yeah, maybe. I bought a coin changer. I bought an arcade, a coin changer that you would put bills in and get quarters out. And I don't think it worked, and I didn't care if it worked. I was just going to put it in the arcade for looks. And it was like 100 pounds. It was super heavy. It was like solid metal and super heavy. And I think that might be it. I can't tell if that's the back of it. But when I look down here, I see whatever it is I've got on a dolly with wheels. So it's very possible that that's it. I just can't tell. But anyway, I got this Zaxxon for $50. It worked great. And I actually did a YouTube video about how to drill out arcade locks. I don't know if it's on YouTube anymore or not, but this is the machine that I used because I didn't get any locks with it. And I couldn't get the cabinet open. And so anyway, I had to drill out the lock. And this is before I could really pick locks. So I had to just drill it out. So let's see here. Yep, there's the old Zaxxon. And that's it. That's the last pictures in this directory. Now, this isn't, you know what I'm going to do? We are right at the 2-hour mark, and I'm not going to drag this on for any longer, but I am going to do one thing. I'm going to do about a 30-second go through. Let me go to... I'm going to say, let me check this folder real quick because this has about 10 pictures in it. Let me see if this is... yeah, well, I'm just going to pull these up real quick. So that, like I said, this is real quick, and it's only about 10 pictures. But this is pictures from 2007. So this is kind of what the arcade looked like once I had most of the stuff populated and had everything out there up and running. You can see, like I talked about, the heavy barrel. Remember I said I started picking up the gray vinyl. You can see that the gray vinyl is all gone. But there's Shinobi. Now, and see, like I said, I thought that folder has most of the machines, but like there's my Make Tracks, which wasn't in that folder. This is a Road Riot 4-wheel drive, which wasn't in that folder. So it's definitely not all the machines I own, but it was most of the machines, you know. But this was kind of what the arcade looked like in 2007 in the backyard. Notice I said I tried to hide those support poles, the ceiling support poles. This was not the last layout that I did, but this was I think this got me about 24 machines out in the arcade before, and having stuff still where you had enough elbow room to play stuff, you know. My wife again did all the those are black and white carpet tiles that were not stuck down or anything. They were just non-skid tiles, and she had those delivered and put down there. Yeah, at the very end, by the end, I had 30 machines out there, but with a slightly different layout that wasn't really as open. So this layout was kind of better. That's the Altered Beast. That was in a track and field cabinet. So Altered Beast is not one that was really, I didn't have individual pictures of that. Altered Beast is an okay game. Not a favorite of mine. I got a deal on it, you know. So there you can see there's the Neo Geo. That was before I swapped them, because you can see that's a one cart system. Let's see. There's a dart machine that I had out there for a while. You can see the yellow dart machine there in the middle. And I think all those other machines are ones that we had pictures of. This is kind of looking down the middle. You can see I still had the poker table out there. This is kind of a view of the other side. There's the Karate Champ, like that wasn't in the thing. There's the old Cactus Flax machine. That's the other Shinobi, my backup Shinobi. So I had the main Shinobi and the backup Shinobi. Could never have too many machines with suicide batteries. Road Blasters. There's that Mortal Kombat. Once it was all, I think I can't tell if it looks like maybe the monitor wasn't in there yet, but that was the Mortal Kombat. The CRT. Oh, yeah. So this, what I did was, I told you I built that MAME front end. I built a thing that showed 80s music videos. And so when you turned it on, it basically would get a random playlist of videos, and it would just play them. And I had these big speakers hooked up, and I don't know if you can see the speaker, but I had two of those like giant, old school house home speakers hooked up there, and there was a tuner. And so that's what that was. And then eventually, like I said, I hooked up a second set of speakers and ran them outside to be out there. So, yeah. So there's a Street Fighter and Rampage. There's where trash started accumulating in the corner, parts. Anytime you get into this kind of stuff, you're always going to end up with extra parts and stuff like that. The gauntlet and all that. So anyway, that's all of it. I think that's all of it. That kind of sums up what my arcade looked like. Over the years, like I said, I've kept a list, and I think that I bought and sold about 100 games, give or take. Over the years, I think I owned about 100 machines. The most I had at one time was 30 or a little more than 30. The most I could put out in the building was 30. And then I had a few out in the garage with nowhere to go. And then that's when you just got to stop when you got it. So, yeah. And that's the biggest problem is now I couldn't afford to do it. You know what I mean? Like, I would go every few months, every 3 months, the arcade auction would come in, and you go and you get, 30, you go get a few machines for $50 or something like that. And then they'd be broken, and you'd have to learn how to, work on them. You know what I mean? And do that kind of stuff. But it was, I wish, I had somebody one time try to sell me a Twilight Zone pinball machine, and it was like, I think he was asking like $7,000 or $8,000 or something. And I just remember, like, I could sell every arcade game that I owned and still not be able to afford one high dollar pinball machine. You know what I mean? So definitely, like, my collection was not all great looking. When I bought them, a lot of them didn't work, so I had to put a lot of time into fixing them and painting them and restoring them and doing stuff like that. But it was definitely a fun hobby. I enjoyed doing it, but the downside of it, there's many, many, many downsides to collecting arcade games. You know, there was always the joy of going out and turning on a machine and having it be broken. And you'd be like, wow, there's a $500 thing I own that all of a sudden doesn't work. And it was like, they were always breaking. They were just always in a constant state of breaking. So it wasn't like, you would, you'd get it fixed and it would be good forever. You just knew eventually it was going to die again. You know what I mean? So that part was frustrating. And then obviously there's logistics, like, a lot of us have collected Atari games or Nintendo games. Like, I don't know the last time you bought a Nintendo game, but you can buy one and stick it in your back pocket and walk home. Where these, you got to own a truck. You got to own a dolly. It's real good if you own a friend. And, I showed you at the very beginning, I had to move these all the way from my driveway up a hill across the yard, drag them through, the yard and do all that stuff. And, it was definitely a handful. So, anyway, well, I don't have my gaming stuff set up on this laptop today. So that's what I could do. That's what I could do on the hardware that I've got set up right now. So, but it's always good. Go through the memories, go through and look at the old stuff and reminisce. Like I said, I moved to a house that had a big, giant yard and a medium-sized house, to a big, giant house that backed up to a pond that didn't have a very big backyard. And when it would rain, the pond water would come up. We had problems we eventually moved because we thought the house might be sinking, so I couldn't put an arcade building in the backyard, and I moved them into storage. And then now it's just the timer's going off, like I'm paying every month on storage, so it was a thing to do at that time in my life. It's pretty fun when you only have one kid and they're little, and you just got a good job and you got some money and you got time to work on stuff, but you kind of go through that phase and then you can't do it anymore. So I only have one machine right now, and it's a 60-in-1 and it's broken. So I need to, the power supply went out on it. I swapped out the power supply and it worked, and then the PCB went out on it. So I don't know if I'm going to MAME it or do something, but it's out there in the lobby of my movie room. So I need to fix it. Otherwise it's just taking up space. But one of these days I'll get that up and running. So anyway, man, I appreciate you guys coming and hanging out, listening to me reminisce about old collections, old stuff I used to own. And again, it gives me an excuse to go through them and look at everything. So the Amigos have been very good to me. They've let me put my shows on their feed and their channel. So if you're not subscribed to Amigos Retro Gaming on Twitch, be sure to do that. On Friday, they do their show live Friday afternoon at 4 p.m. Central. I think it's 5 Eastern. Yes, it would be 5 Eastern. And they always review a new Amiga or Amiga game, and then they go through highlights. And so you may see a clip or two of this on there, along with some other cool stuff from the community. So be sure to check them out. If you want to know what all's going on with me, you can go to robohara.com for blog posts. You can follow me on Twitter at Commodork. I'm pretty active on Twitter. And if you want behind the scenes stuff and what's going on with the podcast and everything, you could go to patreon.com/RobO'Hara. I think there's a $2 tier that I'm about to get rid of because I don't have anybody at the $2 tier. But the main one would be $4, and then there's a $10 one where you get ask questions and stuff on the shows, and those are all the guys keeping the shows together. There should be. There's a Sprite Castle and there's a you don't know Flack, both in the shoot. Switching out computers has kind of set me behind here a little bit, and then if you've been following the blog or the Patreon, you know that we had a cat pass away. So it's been kind of a crapola week. It's actually been a crapola month, if you want to know the real truth. But anyway, so that stuff's coming. You can always go to podcast.robohair.com and check out the shows. There's a new Rando Rob going up every single day. I did that all last month, and I got or all this month so far, and more coming. In fact, I got to go upload one for tonight. So I guess I'll get off this, go fix me a drink, and then go upload Rando Rob. So again, thanks everybody for coming on, and you will be, as soon as I find my mouse cursor, you'll be seeing and hearing from me soon. Thank you guys. Appreciate y'all.